welcome to episode 15 of the Digital Discipleship Podcast. Look, as always, I am just elated to be here with you again to share with you some new content and some new strategies and ideas to help you really maximize what God is doing in and through you. And today I'm really excited because I'm sharing with you something that is near and dear to my heart. I'm going to be sharing with you a vision that God gave me many years ago, even before I was senior pastoring again at this particular time. I had taken a break from being a senior leader in ministry, and I'm going to share with you a vision that the Lord downloaded to me that I believe is really intended to be a solution to something happening in our world. And so I'm excited to share it with you. All right, and we're going to be talking about this. And we're going to be diving into this, and I think it's really going to bless you and bless your life. It's going to be called the intimate church. That's what this episode is all about. It's all about the intimate church, and I'll explain more about what that is. But let me do an introduction. My name is Henry. I am the founder and owner of Simple Systems Consulting, and so I literally we exist and we are here because we want to help leaders lead well, and even more than that, we really are wrestling through some things. We're wrestling through some amazing things on the inside of our company as God has blessed us and we're growing. We're really kind of restructuring and reorganizing a ton of things. But what we're discovering is what we're really praying our legacy is going to be. And we're really praying that our legacy is going to be something around helping churches that are declining or that are stuck become churches that are growing. And that's what we want to do. We want to help you by helping you create the systems and the strategies to do it. All right. So that's who I am. And as I said before, we're going to be talking a little bit about intimate church. But before we jump into the intimate church, let's do a little bit of background. All right. I want to introduce you to a term that I think you ought to know. It is the term phygital. Phygital. And we've talked about this before, but let's dive into it just a little bit more. Because if we're going to lead well, then we've got to understand the duality of the world we live in now, right? Which is the phygital, which is this blend between the physical and the digital. That line, ever since the onset of COVID-19, has irrevocably been blurred in a way that is going to exist for the foreseeable future. Is that now we must grapple with the reality that people see the physical and the digital world as being more equal than at any other time in history. And so we've got to grab that, especially in the church. We've got to grab that the old and new have now come together. And instead of trying to go back to the old or just push just into the new, we've got to find the place where those two things overlap. Hence the Venn diagram on the screen. We've got to see where those things overlap. And here's a perfect story to illustrate. A father and son were running a company together. Father had spent about 20 years building this company, and he was about ready to retire. And he was bringing his young son higher into the company so that they can work together to really build it out. And so on this one particular day, the father and the son have a meeting scheduled with their biggest client. And they're getting ready for this meeting, and the father is anxious because this is his son's first time getting a chance to prove that he's ready, because the father's been building this for 20 years and he's nervous because he loves his son, but his son's methods are different. He comes from a different generation. He's not sure if he's going to be able to carry it on. So the day of their meeting with their client, the father is sitting in the lobby. He's dressed in his suit. He's got his briefcase. He's ready to go up and meet the client. He's there 15 minutes early. He looks at his watch and he's a bit nervous because his son is not there yet. 10 minutes before their meeting, his son still isn't there. He's calling him, but he's not getting an answer. And he's starting to get frustrated because his son should have been there so that they can go and have this meeting. 5 minutes before the meeting, he's still not there. And so the father resolves to do the meeting alone and gets on the elevator to go upstairs. As he is checking in, he's ushered back to the office of his client. And to his surprise, he finds her smiling. And even as she's smiling, the client is smiling, she picks up her phone, turns it around, to face the father and says, "Oh my goodness, look, I've been on the phone with your son for the last 15 minutes." And that is the difference in the world that we live in. This client was elated because she was talking to the son. Although it was not what we would traditionally consider face to face, it was an acceptable form of face to face that has evolved onto the scene, which is she was standing there FaceTiming with the son, having a conversation. And here you have a father who says, "No, we've got to do it the way we've always done it," which is where we go in person, we meet people there, we go. And there are going to be some times when there's truth. But we also saw that the client that he was so worried about was perfectly fine with the new method that the son brought on, which is say, let's converse digitally. And now we add a flexibility to our communication, our relationship. And so that's just an example of what the phygital world looks like and how we've got to get ready for it. But let me give you some more stats to help you really understand this phygital world, to really help you understand what's happening. Number one, digital growth is outpacing physical growth. If you look around, you see shopping malls are dying, and you see that the number of online boutiques and online websites and the number of vendors that allow you to order things online has completely gone through the roof. Digital is outpacing physical. Is that when a company wants to start now, they're not automatically starting with brick and mortar. The same is true for the church. I've been recommending to church planters for the last 6 months to a year that if you're getting ready to start a church, I would explore starting your digital footprint before you even go physical. Start digitally, because now your startup costs are so low. Now you can go without having a full band. You can go without having a full building for that to have church. You can go without all that. All you need is a simple camera setup. If you want some music, you can have that, some good lighting and a microphone, and you can go and you can start building digital community, whether it's, via live stream or Zoom rooms or whatever it is, you can start doing that. The digital is outpacing the physical. You need to know that. So and I'm saying that because if you're trying to just run back to just focus on the physical, you are missing what's happening right now. So you've got to be aware that the digital is outpacing the physical. Here's another thing. As of just a most recent report a couple of years ago, 60% of all giving is digital. People are giving now, most of them are giving digitally. Is that people are not just giving by coming to sit in the church and filling out an envelope and putting cash in there. That's not how they're giving. The way that they're giving now is digital, right? Which changes the game, which allows people who aren't even physically present to still be actively sowing and investing in what God is doing, right? It allows them to do that. And so that's something for you to be aware of, that it used to be, especially in the church, that we really needed the people to be in the room, because if they weren't in the room, we knew they weren't giving. And if they weren't giving, there was going to be a shortfall in the budget for the things that we need to take care of, whether it was staff, payroll, utilities, mortgage, building fund, whatever it is. Now that's not the case. Now people can give online via text. They can give in all these different ways. They can set up automatic giving, ACH giving, all these different things. They can go. And so just as a quick point of reference, if you're a church leader or you're a part of a team in a church, you need to make sure that you have multiple ways for people to give digitally. You want to have 4 or 5 different ways that people can give, because the more ways you have for people to give, the more people will kind of settle in. Different people have different ways that they give. Like you discover, man, a lot of younger people, resources like Venmo, Zelle, Cash App, those things are like second nature to them now. Like I'm really curious how many Gen Zers are going to have traditional bank accounts, because services like Cash App now can do everything that a bank account can do, right? You can set up your direct deposit to Cash App, right? And they'll give you bonuses for doing it. They will. They've been hounding me. Look, they'll give me $100 if I set up a direct deposit to go to Cash App, right? And I'm still a little, I'm like, I want a bank, but they do it. They're getting better about the support they provide because they want to be taken seriously. They make it easy for you to move money between different sources. It's really quick. So you know what? You've got to understand that different people have different resources or different ways that they like to use. So the more of them you have, the more comfortable you can help people become when it comes to digital giving. All right. Here's another one. In-person attendance was declining before COVID. So before COVID even happened, in-person attendance was declining. It was going down. And so understanding that, what you need to realize is that there may be a portion of your reach that is digital. Like, we're no longer limited by the things we used to be limited by. Like, now time and space is no longer a limit, right? So for that person who says, hey, I'm struggling to find a church in my area that I can be a part of or where I fit or whatever it is, that doesn't matter anymore, because now you can do so much digitally. There's a client we're working with. They have people who fly in once a month from all over the country to be a part of their church. 3 weeks a month they watch online. 1 weekend a month they actually fly in, they plug in, and we work together, right? And so you have to understand that sometimes, because this world has gone so digital, sometimes people won't engage in person like they used to. They'll engage differently by just watching online, and that's okay. All right. Here's the final thing, is that more people work digitally now than ever. Now than ever. Think about how many people's jobs have gone digital. And it has been a blessing for the employee and the employer. So now for the employee, they save money on travel. Many of them save money on food because they're not eating out, things of that nature. They can be more productive because they avoid the distractions of the office. Now they're not having that frustrated commute in the morning. They're not having to get up and rush out. They're not having to necessarily deal with some of the drama that can come from the office workplace. You still get some of it, but not all of it. And they get to spend more time doing the things that they need to do, because now 8 hours of work is really 8 hours of work instead of 10 hours of work because of travel or because of other things. Now people, because they're working remote, they can do more with their lives, right? I'm just going to tell you, like, I fully embrace it. Now, again, as the owner of the company, and as running a business, I kind of have, another level of flexibility. But just this past week, I sat and did all my work, sitting in a chair with my feet in the sand on the beach, right? And I had meetings, I had trainings, I did all of that stuff, but I did it from the beach, right? And I did it, and I covered the content. I did all the same stuff, but I did it from a more peaceful location. And so that changes things, and it helps the employer as well, because now you get a little bit more focused employee. Your overhead costs go down. Now you don't need to maintain as large a facility. Now you may not need to do all those things. You can handle it differently, all right? So all of those things are things you need to understand the digital world. So here's where I'm going with this, is that because things have evolved so quickly, and because people have had to spend so much time being more isolated than normal, I think there's going to be a course correction. And I think it's already happening. And the course correction that's happening is a move towards intimacy. Intimacy. And so as that course correction is moving towards intimacy, I think one of the things that we're learning and one of the things that we're getting to see is that the small to medium-sized church has an amazing opportunity. We have an amazing opportunity to take some new ground, and to see our churches drive ahead and drive forward in significant ways that make a difference, right? That we don't have to stay on the sideline, because this digital world has opened up space for all of us. And I think it's really opened up space for the small to medium-sized church. Pre-pandemic, two churches were growing, really big churches and really small churches. And so I'm telling you, there's an opportunity, but there's a mindset that you've got to have. And you see it on the screen. You've got to develop the mindset of the insurgent. Right? When I think of insurgent, I think of two sides to a coin. On one side, you've got the incumbent, and on one side, you've got the insurgent. The incumbent is the one who's already in power. the one who's always in authority, the one that represents how things have been already. The insurgent is one who is breaking in, who is breaking through. They're saying the insurgent says, yes, maybe I was expected to just be this little small group that's over here in this corner. But as the insurgent, we see an opportunity. And so we're pressing in. We're pressing in and we're going like, no, we don't have to settle for less. We can come in and we can make some change. We can come in and we can do some things differently. And I think that's the mindset is that, hey, look, we can take some new territory, that we don't have to be what we've always been, that we can come in and that we can take some new territory because as a small to medium sized church, we provide something that's really unique, and that's intimacy. And so here's what I want to give you today is that as I'm sharing with you this vision, I want to share with you the 8 qualities of an intimate church, right? As I said, the Lord gave me this years ago. I started getting it before I was a pastor. And then when I became a pastor of a small church, I started to give it even more because I started to see that small is not a detriment. It's an advantage. That small is an advantage in the church. That when you're a certain size, like there are advantages, whoever you are and wherever you are as a church, there are advantages that you have. Even if you're in the marketplace, if you're a business, if you own a small business, there are advantages to it. One of my favorite shows, The Office, there's this scene I love where one of the main characters, Dwight, is trying to talk to this client, and this client has been working with one of the big box stores, Office Depot, Staples, whatever. And he's saying to them, like, you need to choose us. And his argument is really intimacy. So he's talking to the guy and is like, well, nah, I like this. And so he picks up the phone, he punches in a number. He's calling one of the big box stores, right? And he lets it ring. And after it's ringing for a long time, it's going, they're getting all these messages and stuff like that. Finally, the potential client looks and says, what's that? He says, that's the big box stores. He says, check this out. And he punches in a phone number, calls their office, and a receptionist, Pam, answers immediately. He says, that's the difference. He says, when you deal with us, when you deal with a company like us, a company our size, he says, you get real people when you need them. He says, you call me, I'm going to pick up the phone. You call me, you can get me. And that's one of the advantages. And so he ends up winning that client because he says, you know what? We're small enough to where we can pay attention to every individual person. We're small enough to where if you've got something going on, you could just pick up the phone and call me. You don't have to set a meeting, right? And so you have advantages as as a small church that you want to take advantage of, all right? So let me give you the overview of how I see this. The intimate church, as related to the original vision, the way God gave it to me, is a church that embraces always being a congregation of around 125 people, right? And it's not saying that we never can grow beyond that, because we can. But it's saying when we do, our goal is to then plant another intimate church, right? Which is why I've said in previous episodes, I feel like my call is to lead one church, one movement of 10 churches, not one church of 1,000 people, right? A movement of 10 churches with 100 people each, not one church of 1,000 people. And so that's just my sense of call, my sense of purpose, my sense of drive, right? And so with the intimate church, that's what you're saying. You're saying we want to have an intentional strategy of being a small, or instead of saying small, an intimate church that plants intimate churches. And so to help this make sense, I've broken it down into 8 qualities, okay? And I want to lay these 8 qualities in front of you so that you can kind of get a sense of what they are and what they look like, all right? 8 qualities. Number 1 is intimate worship. Intimate worship. You know, when we think about intimate worship and we think about what it's like to really lead what we're talking about as an intimate church, then we're saying a couple things. Number 1, we're embracing being a congregation that worships together with 125 people or less, right? Where you look across the room and you have a real connection with the other people in the room. Maybe you just had dinner with somebody else in that room last night. Maybe you're in a small group with somebody else in that room. Maybe your kids are friends with the family sitting across from you, right? There's real intimacy. And so we're embracing this vision of growing wide, not necessarily growing really tall and visible, but really wide and effective. And so it's embracing intimate worship, right? And grabbing this and saying, hey, look, we want to be a part of having a worship gathering that is intimate. And not just intimate in the fact that we have the number of people we have, but intimate in the fact of how our service operates. Intimate in the fact that there's chances for people to engage with each other. Intimate in the fact that we're trying to involve every person we can somehow in the work that's happening all throughout the life of the church, right? And so it's this idea of saying, okay, look, we want to be intimate in how we worship, but also in our approach to worship. All right, that's intimate worship. Number two is intimate discipleship. Intimate discipleship is, and this is really about leaning into the strengths of the church and leaning into those relationships that are there. You know, one of the things that I've seen over the last couple of years, I've seen many more black churches embrace small groups. And for many years, it just wasn't the case. And one of the reasons I believe it wasn't the case that we saw a ton of small groups in black church context is because most people of African American descent naturally group together, right? You get a couple of people in a room and you just let them talk for a little bit. Before you know it, you'll see little pockets of people. And so people kind of naturally built that together. Well, here what we're saying is identify the different areas where your church might be strong. And whatever those discipleship models might be, it could be small group model where you got different small groups all over the city. It could be a ministry model where you've got a men's ministry, a women's ministry, a couples ministry, a youth ministry, a kids ministry, whatever it is. And through that model, you do it. But the whole point is this, is to really understand that discipleship is an intimately involved undertaking, right? To really take it on as an everybody involved process that includes us being up close and personal, right? It's not just programming that people just do. It's not just classes that people attend, but it's how we become more like Jesus as we walk through relationship with one another. And so it's encouraging people to be in deep connection with other people. It's encouraging people to spend time with other people. It's encouraging all those things because they're all a part of the big picture of helping drive things forward, right? It's this idea of saying, you know what, we want to have intimate discipleship. Number three is intimate leadership. Intimate leadership. You know, it's the idea that the way you develop leaders is by intentionally walking with other people. Is that when you're an intimate church, you can walk with people one on one, right? Larger churches, you have to systemize everything. And even as an intimate church, the wider you grow, there will come a time where you may have to systemize more and more things, right? That's just a part of it because you want to create ways for people to do what's not natural to them. And that's one of the things that systems do for you is that it helps you take people who are not accustomed at doing a specific thing and give them a framework to help them get started. And it doesn't mean they always have to do it exactly like you, but it does mean that you're laying out a blueprint for them to follow. And so a part of that is leadership. It's embracing that I model, I teach, and I coach. That I model what leadership looks like, that I teach people what I'm doing and show them and let them see it, but then I empower them to do it and I coach them along the way as they go out and do it themselves. But that's a part of making it a priority to intimately walk with other people. You know, I try to do this a couple of ways, and I'll admit that this is not my natural strength, right, when it comes to being intimate with it. But here's one of the things that I really intentionally do is that instead of trying to touch every person in the church, I have learned to try to do my best to stay connected with the people who touch the people in the church, right? And so our leadership team, our ministry team, I try to stay really connected to them as they do what they're called to do so that then I can walk with them along the journey so that they can go out and go forward and do the best at what God has called them to do. but you've got to be focused in on producing new leaders. And as an intimate church, you can do that in a way that is really personal and is really intentional. You can follow the Jesus model. You can grab 12 and spend some really focused time with those 12 and then send those 12 out to go and do ministry, right? Intimate leadership. Number 4 is intimate teams. Intimate teams. And this is important. It is building a culture where every leader understands their responsibility to build other leaders, to invite and develop and empower other leaders. Sometimes our churches struggle because one or two people hold on to things for too long. They hold on for too long. When really what we need to embrace is how do we continue to build teams that empowers people to go out into the work of God and to really do it in a way that serves who they're called to be, but helps to continue to expand the ministry. Think about this. When you think about teams, and this is a place where many small churches can struggle. Think about the number of areas in your church that would really suffer if one person didn't show up on Sunday. I remember working with this one church in the past, and they were getting into trying to be able to take offerings digitally. But they didn't really have a system for it. And so the only system that they had was there was a lady there who had PayPal on her iPad. And so if somebody wanted to give, they could go up to her after service and give her via her iPad, right? Well, here was the problem. Whenever she didn't come to church, nobody else had access in order for those things to be laid out and to be set up. Nobody else could do it. Nobody else could do it, right? And so when she wasn't there, there was no digital giving. You just had to save it till next week. Well, we just missed it, right? And many of our teams are like that. Is that if this person has done this for so long by themselves, if they don't show up to do it, it doesn't get done, right? It just doesn't happen. It doesn't get done. And that can't be our reality. That cannot be our reality. And so with that not being our reality, then one of the things that we've got to do is that we've got to make sure that we set the standard that every leader has to lead through teams. Has to lead through teams. Is that I constantly try to make that clear to our leaders that I'm not asking you to do everything. I am asking you to lead it. I'm asking you to empower people to do those things so that you can push them through and allow them to be developed just as you are. All right. Let's keep going. Next is another good one. Intimate evangelism. Intimate evangelism. You see, in the intimate church, is that our evangelism is not centered on just these really wide-reaching marketing campaigns. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with sending out a mass mailer. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with, blanketing the whole community with door hangers. Like all of those things can be legitimate ways to reach people. But with the intimate church, one of the things that you get to do is to equip the people in the house to go and invite other people to come into relationship with Jesus and the church. And I love that because evangelism can be a really diverse undertaking. Like it can be really, really diverse. It doesn't have to be one thing, right? But the heart of it is really sharing Jesus, right? But here are a couple of ways that the intimate church can do it differently, right? You've got the number one, the inviting people to church, right? And so here the task of the intimate church is just to equip people to invite easily. Give them resources and tools that make it easy for them to invite other people to church. It could be putting together a pre-made text message invite, sending it to all the people in the church and saying, hey, look, text this to 10 people you know, inviting them to come to church, whatever it may be. All right, that's one piece. Another piece of intimate evangelism can be social media in this digital age, is equipping and coaching the people in the congregation on how to use their social media pages for the glory of God and to build the kingdom, right? How do we do that? How do we make that happen? Right? There are a couple of different ways that we can do it, but social media is just a tool. Another way is just bringing friends and people to church on a regular basis. having a friend and say, hey, look, I want to invite you to come in. I want to invite you to come and visit. I want to invite you to come and do this. It's invitational. Here's another one: telling people's story. Telling people's story. That's one of the things that we do in our church. We don't do it every Sunday, but periodically we have moments where we do something called share time, and we allow individuals to come up and to share their story from the stage, and we just talk about them and their lives and where they are and what they sense God doing in their lives and so on and so on, right? And we do that. And so you can kind of have that thing and have that piece going, and have that piece really, really working out. All right. So that's a part of it. But the whole goal is to draw people into the life of the church, but to do it on the people level and not just on the organizational level, right? To put that responsibility in the hands of the people in the church, right? Here's another one. Let's keep going. Next is intimate hospitality. Intimate hospitality. Think about it this way. When you're an intimate church, you get to touch people in a way that leaders of larger churches cannot. If you have a church of 2,000 people, you don't get to shake everybody's hand. You don't get to hug everybody. You don't get to talk to everybody. But when you're leading an intimate church, you can. One of the things that I've done here at our church is that when new people would come and they would visit on Sunday, one of the first things I would say is, hey, great to have you. Can I take you to, I'd love to take you to coffee tomorrow if that works for you. Let me know a day this week. Let me take you to coffee. And you just see people go like, oh, what? Oh, really? Oh, okay, yeah, right? Because I had a coffee shop that I work out of, a lot of days. And so it's like, I'm going to be there anyway. Let them come have coffee with me. So I invite them to come out. We go out to coffee. I talk to them. I get to know them. And right there in that moment, they're sitting there and going like, wow, I'm having coffee with the pastor that I just met. And if I can sit here and have coffee and have this kind of connection with the pastor, I can imagine what the rest of the church must be like. And so that's one of the things that's important. And I can't take credit from that. The leader who was a pastor before me has always been that way, and he's always done that. And so that's one of the things I learned from him. I gleaned from him, and I tell you, it works like gangbusters. And so we really focus on touching people. One of the things that we used to do years ago, and we're actually going to explore bringing this back here at our current church really soon, is that we used to do a pastor's reception or a guest reception every Sunday. And so we just had a little cart or a little table covered with a black sheet. And on top of that table was a bowl of M&Ms, a bowl of Skittles, a bowl of pretzels, and a bowl of ice with assorted sodas next to it. New people, guests went into that reception. They were greeted by a host who said, hey, would you like a quick snack? I said, yeah, what would you like? And they put it in little plastic cups and gave it to them. So they're drinking a little bit of soda, they're eating a little bit of pretzels and candy. There's music playing. There's leaders assigned, might be over there in the room with them. So you might have this week, the worship pastor might be over there, or next week it might be our youth leader might be in there. But they're just talking to the people, getting to know them. And what they're doing is just giving myself and some of our other elders, or my wife, a chance to work through the people that we're greeting so we can get over there to the reception. And we go in there, we just meet them and we listen to them. We hear their story. We're giving them that personal touch to say, hey, we're excited to connect with you. We're excited to know you. And we're excited to walk on this journey with you. All right. And so you want to have intimate hospitality. Another way to say this is radical hospitality. You really want to coach the people in the church, especially the leaders in the church, to really radically go and interact with new people. You want to coach them up to do that, to make sure that becomes a culture and a part of the regular flow of ministry that you walk through. All right, let's keep going. Last two, intimate theology. Intimate theology. The story of Scripture is really about restoring a family. Is that we were intended and created to be in the family of God. He created us to be ambassadors of the culture of heaven on earth. But it's a story of how that family went through some bumps and went through some struggles and went through some things, but God was bringing it back. And so when I say intimate theology, one of the things that I'm saying is that you get to show people that the Word of God supports the building of the natural family and the building of the spiritual family is that you speak value into intimate theology. You speak value into this idea that Jesus wants to be personal with all of us. You speak value into the idea that if Jesus wants to be personal with all of us, he also wants to be personal with each other. You speak value to the truth that the church is called to be a place of intimacy. Acts 2:42. Believers having all things common and daily sharing a meal together and studying the word together and doing this together and doing this together and doing this together. Like that you lean in it into that theology, right? The New Testament church on the first day, 3,000 people gave their life to Christ. But here's what they did. They were a large church that embraced small gatherings. And so it made a difference. It made a difference for them. It made a difference in their lives. It made a difference in their world because they embraced it. Because they said, I get it. You know, we want to make sure that people realize they're a part of something bigger, but that we also want to put keen focus on having an intimate theology, that God wants to know me personally and that he's calling me to know others personally. Takes me to my last one, intimate preaching. Intimate preaching. You know, here's one of the things that's so important when it comes to intimate preaching is that, and this is for preachers, this may be even for business owners, you have got to speak to the people that God is giving you. Speak to the people God is giving you. Speak to the people and to what God is doing in the house. And as you embrace that, one of the things that you discover, scripture says that the sheep know my voice, right? The people who are called to walk with you will show up when you speak the authentic language of the place that God has called you to. Right? I remember early in my ministry, I remember preaching to the people that I thought I wanted, not the people that I had. You know, and so I had these college students who were growing and learning and figuring it out. But I was preaching to people who have been walking with Jesus for 10 and 15 years. You know, I'm preaching to the erudite, to the people who are smart and want to chew on the revelation. Right? And I'm realizing like, man, you know, if I've got people who need the sincere milk of the word, I need to give them the sincere milk of the word. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't slide some meat in, and that doesn't mean I do. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is the advantage that you have in a small church is that you can know where the people in the church specifically are. You can know what they're going through. You know, this year I planned our entire preaching calendar for the year. And I use a couple different factors to do it. Number one, what the Lord was speaking to me. Number two, I asked our leaders what they were hearing and what they were seeing in people, what people might need. And then number three, I really just took an inventory of what was happening in the lives of people around us. I started thinking about where we were as a church and where I saw God taking us. And I said, you know what? Here are some of the things that are going to fill the gap. And so from there, I started to go, okay, Lord, here are some topics I believe we need to cover. Holy Spirit, lead me in this. And so, you know, he led me to add some stuff and take some stuff out and do some different things. But it was all there. It was all right there because we were ready for it. And because we had prepared by making sure that we were getting ready to try to do some intimate preaching. That I wanted to make sure to the best of my ability that when people walk in, the word meets them right where they are. Right. And so that's what we were trying to do. And so for you, here's what I'm asking you to embrace. You have an amazing opportunity as the leader of an intimate church to really lean into what God wants to do in and through you and your church. You have that opportunity, but you've got to choose to step into it. It's yours for the taking, but you got to go get it. Listen, I hope this was good for you. I had fun revealing this and sharing this with you because it's so near and dear to my heart. But I want to encourage you, man, embrace your season. Embrace who God's called you to be and where he's called you to be and see what he's called you to do. Listen, episode 16 is on deck. But until then,